Hello everyone. So we are going to talk about API testing. So to understand API testing, first of all you need to understand what is API. Stands for Application Programming Interface. What is this? What is Application Programming Interface? What is the purpose of doing the API testing? So that means before you understand these terminologies, first you need to have certain basics before we go and get into the API testing. So for example, if I ask you what is software, right? So you might already aware of what is software. What is software? It is collection of executable programs. So what kind of softwares you might have already seen? You might know at a high level there are two categories of softwares you might have seen: desktop applications, and you might see web applications, right? So you already know what is a desktop applications. Whatever the Word document you are seeing here, that is MS Office. You are going to install onto this computer and you are making use of this. This is an example of a desktop application. Similarly, you may have VLC media player, right? So what is desktop application? Desktop application means you will install the software on the computer and you will make use of it. That is called your desktop application. And web application means you are going to access a URL. Stands for Uniform Resource Locator. So simply, you might have already heard of this name. So URL is something like your website name. Let's say www.google.com. So this we call it as URL. Stands for what? Uniform Resource Locator. So if at all it is a web application, you are going to access this web application through a browser. Let's say you have Chrome browser here. See here, this is my Chrome browser, and I'll go and I'll search the URL, and then I will be able to see the Google page. So this is my web application. Similarly, you have Amazon.in, that is Amazon website. And also you have our organization website, that is rkithub.in. So this is RKIT Training Hub website. What are all the information, what is the training we are going to provide, everything is provided on this website. So that means whatever the applications you are going to access through, so through internet, those applications we call it as web applications. So now you are clear with there are how many types of applications at a high level. You have two categories. One is desktop application and another one is web applications. So how you are accessing these web applications? You are accessing these web applications through the internet. So using Chrome browser, you can use Internet Explorer, or else Firefox browser. All these browsers you can make use and access the web applications. So now once you understand these basic terminologies, now you need to understand what is this application is all about. So let's talk about the web applications, because when you're working with APIs, so all these APIs are, API stands for Application Programming Interface. So these will be there in the web applications. What is that and how we are going to test them, we will understand once we understand these basics. So now what will happen? So before we go to that, first what you need to understand is every application, every web application, whatever the application you take, whether it is a desktop application or whether it is a web application, any kind of application, you have to understand certain things. An application consists of three layers. There are three layers. which are very, very important for any application. The first one is presentation layer. Presentation layer, that we call it as PL. So PL stands for what? Presentation layer. And you will also have application server or business logic layer. We call it as application server layer or business logic layer. You can call any of these names. And the last one is database layer. Don't worry if you don't understand at this point of time, but I will explain you with the application directly. So now when I say any application will consist of these three layers means presentation layer. That means presentation layer means if you look at this web application, whatever the web application you see here, where the user, the client means your customer. So I am accessing this application from my desktop or laptop, wherever I open, if I am able to search something, so that means if I can able to do certain operation, like that means I'm going here and I'm going to check iPhone 16 Pro Max. So once I click on search button, automatically it is giving me some information. That means wherever the user is able to do certain operations, if you take this website also, I wanted to go and see what are all the trainings available, and then I wanted to go to SDET and I wanted to understand about. So once I click wherever the operations I do, there is certain response I am getting and I am able to see that on my screen. So this layer we call it as presentation layer of the application. So presentation layer means what? Where the client is able to perform the operation. Who is client? So client means whoever the person, whoever is trying to access this application from the internet, from a either you might be using your, you might use your desktop to access this with the internet, or you might use your mobile phone, or you might use your tablet, right? There are various kinds of devices where you are going to access your application presentation layer using these three devices. So that means where client resides, that we call it as your presentation layer. And now if I go back and if you look at, I'm going to check what is the cost of this particular this item. So iPhone 16 256 GB. Just click on this. See what is happening. It is going to the server and getting the information back to me on the screen. That means there is some business logic the developer might have written, and with that only whatever the request I am giving and it is giving back to the user, so the response will come based upon the business logic layer or application server. So that means whatever the operation you do from these clients, from the front end, from the application, based upon the business logic, where it will go to the corresponding database of the application. That means there are certain informations which we are going to save in the database, and from there this information will come back, right? So for example, if I go and look at another website like ticket booking site, redbus.in. So if I go and see, this is my presentation layer. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to hit Hyderabad and to Bangalore. I wanted to travel. On which date I wanted to travel? On 4th. So once I click on search button, see it is doing some operation. That means based upon the business logic, whatever the code the developer has written, it will try to pull the information from the different travelers. So different travels, where are so many travels here: Vikram travels, TKV travels, KSM travels, all these travels informations, where it is coming from, it is coming from the database of this particular system. That means any application, whatever the operations you are doing, you will be having a presentation layer, and you will be having a business logic layer, and also you will have database layer. So once you understand this, there you have to understand one more concept called how many types of environments are available. Okay, so this is another important topic before we go to API testing. There are four categories of environments available. Those are, first one we call it as stand-alone environment. We also call this one as one-tier architecture. One-tier architecture. And the second one is client-server architecture, that we call it as two-tier architecture. And you will have web environment. We call this as three-tier architecture. And we will have distributed environment. We call this as n-tier architecture. So like this, you have four architectures. We will understand one by one.